Notice, good evening. You will notice that Robbie and I share a last name. Over a decade ago, we were married, and we are no longer. And, part of my belief is that all of us are doing this in an effort to raise the level of the pond. And Robbie and I think, are better friends now than we were when we were married. But we also share a solid interest in contemporary art and is doing what is good for artists and a belief in what artists can do. Robbie's been working for a period of time in the role of an artist's business partner. And, that was first turned on, that notion first came to me in discussions with Stan Klein, who some of you know and or are familiar with, and Stan is not related to either of us. And he has been working as Tony Fitzpatrick's business partner for a while, and Robbie's gotten some guidance from him and done some creative things on her own. But the idea that an artist business partner is someone who works, I guess we would say, Robbie, would you agree, co-equally with an artist and shares a common concern about what is best for that artist to do, and that it isn't like you are the minion of an artist, you are a participant in the artist's career. Would you agree with that?
I would replace that with collaborator, but
okay.
Yes, but the description I think is apt and accurate.
I think that this is a role that I think is really important and significant for a lot of people. I think, all of us keep listening to people like all the other webinars that we've heard and talk about how we're supposed to take what we've been giving 100% of our time to, and now we're supposed to add 50% more to this and 50% more to that. And some of us, frankly, would rather just stay in the studio and not have to deal with going out all the time, which I still think is a damn good idea, even if you do have an artist business partner. But an artist business partner can serve some of those roles, be a buffer between you and the public, answer the phone, solicit exhibitions, the kinds of things that you wouldn't want to trust a gallery assistant or, a studio assistant to do for you. Can you talk about some of the kinds of things that you're involved with, Robbie?
Sure. I will take it a step back. I'll take it back a step further and talk about helping the artist or encouraging the artist to identify his or her vision. It was kind of as you were talking about, Paul, when you were concluding the Lauren session about encouraging the artist to look forward. There have been people who have come to me and they'll say, hey, can you write a press release for this or that? And I always say, yes, but to what end? There's always sort of a larger conversation. So my conversation with the artist always begins with, what's your vision? What do you want? What is it in your career that you want to pursue? And every artist has a unique answer. They're all very idiosyncratic, and they're really pretty different from each other, which was a surprise to me. So I don't answer the phone. You said a couple of things, Paul. I don't work in artist studios. I don't answer the phone. I don't get involved. On that level, I don't get involved on the level that Stan Klein does with Tony, for instance. What I do after determining what the artist wants, what his desires are, is they kind of fall into a small group of categories. I secure gallery representation, I seek museum representation, I pursue public relations / media opportunities, look for alternative spaces, alternative venues, that sort of thing. And act as a sounding board and act as a critic and act as a beefer-upper and a calmer-downer.
So it begins with a pretty intense or in-depth discussion to determine. I guess you find a lot of times that the artist hasn't really vocalized or verbalized these things. And maybe they've thought about them, but they haven't thought about them with the same thoroughness that is necessary to do their job thoroughly and to engage you.
Correct, and they surprise themselves. So there's one artist with whom I'm working has a really stellar body of work. She has no desire to sell it. She wants to get seen, and there's a particular sort of subset of that body of work that she wants to get seen. And she heard herself say to me for the first time in a meeting that she didn't want to sell it, that wasn't her goal. So, I think that just sometimes it's just the articulation of the, of the thought that helps sort of create then the action.
I find the same thing teaching a course where artists are learn to take more responsibility for themselves. The act of signing up for the course is a big first step in them, moving in that direction, which, wouldn't have happened if the course weren't there, but it definitely does that.
I think there's always a period of gestation, like before action is taken, and that can be the hardest in any aspect of life. And then you make it, like once you articulate it, once you get the words out there, you make a commitment to do it, and you're accountable because you've said it to somebody, not just yourself.
So what's the time frame? Where do you begin, or where do you tend to begin with somebody? What kinds of things, what's the process? What happens?
So generally speaking, well, actually categorically speaking, with every artist that I work with, there are probably 3 conversations before we figure out exactly what we want to do. 2 conversations, and then like a letter of agreement that goes back and forth, and that's not interesting for this conversation from a contractual point of view, but it's interesting because it helps us like kind of narrow down and identify how exactly we want to work together. So I'm working with an artist who is kind of nomadic. She's based kind of out of New York and kind of out of Basel and kind of out of Paris. And she has a gallery here, but she's not interested in I didn't meet her through the art world here. And she's not interested in gallery representation. She's interested in getting a particular body of work into a museum show. So then we explore that. She's also interested in getting a Fulbright. So we're exploring, and other grants. So we're exploring that landscape as well. So there is no, I guess to answer the question, the starting point is, it depends on what the artist's goal is.
My experience is, and I'm curious about yours, is that, artists, we tend to assume that we're competing with one another and that all of us in this course have the same objective and the same thing and want to get paid next week by the same person. And what you're telling me is, to a greater extent, we're all individuals, we're all different, we all have different priorities and different notions of how we should get there, right?
Exactly, and that surprised me too, because I thought, from the dealer side, and artists kind of represent a certain face when they approach a gallery. But in this universe that I'm describing, it's very different. And even artists who are looking for gallery representation approach it very differently. Some people, as you know, are like really focused on New York, or they're really focused on one city or another. Some don't care. Some just want to get it out there. Some aren't interested in sales. It's complete. If there are 7 artists, there are 7 different interpretations of how they value their career.
Do you see your role as to agree with what they think those objectives are? Like, hey, Robbie, I really want to be in New York, and I really want to be on 22nd Street. Or do you see it more like, okay, cool, you could do that, but given what you've said, wouldn't you be more satisfied pursuing attention in Toronto or the Art Gallery of Ontario?
Well, that's a good question, because sometimes artists will have, they think aspirationally, right? And they may have an inflated view of where they are in their career and into what galleries they can enter, right? So I try to temper the enthusiasm with a little bit of reality, not trying to quash somebody's goals, because that would be terribly wrong. And if somebody has a really strong opinion about where he or she wants to be, I say, that prevails. I, of course, will offer my opinion and say, you know what, these 2 cities may be great, New York and LA, yeah, maybe down the road, but I know this great gallery in Nashville, and their aesthetic is like your aesthetic. They do really well at art shows. They're really reputable, they're credible, they're great. You might want to consider going there, or, submitting your work there, or having me talk to them on your behalf.
How do you find people accept you or relate to you when you are speaking on someone else's behalf, as opposed to that person contacting the gallery or museum directly?
That's another good question. I had one situation with a guy, a critic in New York, a well-known guy and a tough guy, really tough guy. And he knows the artist, and he likes the artist, and he's known him for like 20 plus years. And his attitude was kind of like, well, what are you coming here? Why are you talking to me? Why isn't Joe Blow coming here instead of you? And I said, well, and then I gave my answer. On the other hand, some dealers will appreciate that I show them, that I'll come to them with several artists. And I don't show them several artists because I think that they will like all three. I'm showing them, it's generally somebody with whom I have a relationship. I think they'll like one, and then I want like a recommendation for the others, or an introduction to another dealer from somebody they know. And in those cases, it's not, they're not surprised that I'm working on somebody's behalf. And I think that happens not infrequently, and probably more frequently in some cities than others. So in Los Angeles, for instance, I think it's probably more common than sort of like the more closed installer thing in New York.
Do you think you get through doors more quickly than if the artists were doing it themselves? Do you have a better way to express? I think all of us find it's easier to talk about somebody else. I mean, I know it's easier for me to give advice to you than it is for me to listen to even my own advice. Do you find that, artists sometimes get tongue-tied when they go try to present themselves in gallery situations, or do you feel like, when we had a gallery, I was always wanted to have a relationship with the artist. Are you saying that these galleries will not have a relationship with Joe Blow, and they will always have to deal with?
No. You said a lot of stuff in that question.
I did.
But to answer the last thing first, no. So I've gotten several of my artists gallery representation, and I make it very clear from the initial conversations with the artist that once I make the introduction to the gallery, I extricate myself. I don't want, unless they have some like prevailing, compelling reason for me to stay in. I want them. That's the primary relationship. I'll take care of the financial thing with me the way I do that. But after that, they have to like each other. They have to meet each other, like each other, respect each other, trust. The dealer has to trust the artist has to trust the dealer to advance his career, etc. Going back to a previous question embedded in that long question, to me, the way I approach this business is the way I approach anything that I do in life, and it's all about the building of relationships, right? So the people that I approach are generally people either with whom I have a relationship, or where somebody can make an introduction for me. So I have not had yet a situation where I'm calling a gallery blindly. So I can't compare that to how the gallery would respond to the artist if the artist called blindly. Yeah.
I know that with Stan Klein, for example, it's frequently different, and that with Tony, they sort of decided that Stan should seek out 6 galleries that were unknown to them in the United States that might be worthy of working with Tony, and where there was a resonance between that gallery and Tony's work. And then, then Stan reached out to those galleries, and showed them work and showed them the website, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the only point I'm saying this is like so many other things in the art world, there's not only one truth, nor is there only one way of going about this. It sounds to me, Robbie, like you're saying that you specialize in finding gallery representation and are not solely being Jiminy Cricket on the artist's shoulder and suggesting other career moves and strategies that they should consider. Yes, no?
I'm not being Jiminy Cricket on their shoulder for sure. But it's, as I said at the beginning, it's not just gallery representation, right? So as I also mentioned with this sort of European artist, she wants a museum show. If I thought it would be to her benefit to get her work out there in a gallery, if she would stand more chance that, you know, like getting a museum show because of that, I would encourage her to do so. In her particular instance, she's had a lot of gallery representation. She's almost 60 years old. She's really renowned. She's got a great career, great bona fides. And that makes sense to her. And I guess I like the fact that these people, the people that I work with, I guess, let me say this, sort of know who they are. They've got a strong sense of themselves as artists. They have a strong sense of their careers and how they want to position themselves, and look to me to help facilitate that.
Okay.
That would be a whole different ballgame, you know, if I were working with artists just out of art school or something, you know. But and that would be fun and cool for a lot of reasons, but I can't afford that, and it's not the right thing. But I think that guiding kind of organizing it is probably more appropriate in an early career artist.
As well as being a sounding board.
Well, I'm a sounding board now. You know, it's different being a sounding board to a 60-year-old established artist than it is to a 22-year-old, you know, to a 22-year-old young artist.
Now, how many hours a week do you spend? How do you break this down? I want to get to the pragmatics so that people can extrapolate. You know, either they can determine that they might want to have a relationship with you, or they can determine that a relationship with you isn't quite right, but a relationship with someone like you might be. So how many hours a week do you tend to work on any given person? Like Stan and Tony, it's 100%. And I've seen people where I recommend that it's 4 hours a week, you know, like one morning or one afternoon a week, and that the business partner, you know, works with a number of people. How does this break down for you?
Okay, I have worked to get away from the figuring out to calculating this on an hourly basis. And lest this sound like a dodge, let me explain. So there's an artist that I work with. I started working with him in November. Within 5 weeks, I had him attached to a great gallery. Okay, so to me, it kind of doesn't matter if I worked for 100 hours or I worked for 1 hour and made the right call. It's kind of like, and I'm actually going to turn this back to you, Paul, because you told me this cute little anecdote the other day about the hat, and you can, and I don't exactly remember it, but the bow thing, so maybe you can you just say this?
You know, I remember, this might be a 30, 40-year-old story about someone who, you know, in determining the value of art, determining the value of a contribution of someone you've retained. And it was about a woman who'd gone to, a millinery is a hat shop, right? And had gone to a hat shop and went off in great detail about what she was looking for. And the milliner there took a straw hat and wrapped an amazing bow on the thing in 5 minutes and said, "Here you go, madam, that'll be $3,500. And the woman just freaked out and said, "That's ridiculous. It only took you 5 minutes. I'm not going to pay that." And he said, "Fine." And he untied the bow and handed her the ribbon and the hat and said, "There you go."
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah.
That's kind of like my operating principle. This is more value-based than time-based. I'm not like an accountant doing your taxes and you're going to pay me X number of dollars per hour, and then I'm going to come up with a product for you that you're going to submit to the IRS. The value of my, you know, almost 30 years in this business and my contacts and my relationships enables me to do things, and it enables me to kind of like be nimble and work in a different kind of way. So, you know, okay, that's on one side of it. The other side of it is I have people for whom I labor long and hard, whether it's creating, you know, introducing them to media people in Chicago, or taking the media people out for lunch and talking about this artist or whatever. I mean, so that, you know, that adds up in a different way. So, but basically I will say that at the end of the day, it's like a value-based thing. It's a value-based thing, as is your story about the hat.
So getting somebody a gallery is worth X dollars, and getting them a museum show is Y dollars, and getting them written up in a magazine is Z dollars, so to speak?
So to speak. I mean, there's one, yes, and there's one person for whom I'm solely doing public relations, and he's paying me $500 a month. And there's a certain expectation that he'll get a certain kind of coverage, but there's not a certain expectation that it's X number of hours per month.
And you don't take on every client or every artist that wants to work with you, do you?
No.
All right, what determines whether you will work with someone?
Well, it's completely subjective, and I have to like the person's work, and I have to like the person. And that's the last thing kind of trumps everything. You know, I'm old enough and have worked in the world long enough to know that I really want to work with only the people I want to work with. So, and you know what, I work with a great group of people. I mean, I love everybody that I work with.
But do you think it's important that you are capable of being an advocate of that person sincerely?
I do. I can't. I'm not George Bird. I can't. It's like when we had the gallery. The people whose work I sold were the people I could get behind. And if I were neutral, I couldn't fake the enthusiasm. You know, if somebody wanted to walk in and say, "Oh, I love that painting," I wouldn't say, "No, you can't buy it because I don't like it." But I wouldn't work hard to try to sell it. And there's something that gives me pleasure about like working with the art that I love, and you know, and enabling other people to have that experience too. As kind of, you know, maybe granola-ish as that sounds, but I mean that sincerely.
My assumption is that there are a lot of artists who would like to take advantage, or let's say work with people like you, and that there are not enough people like you who have the ability, the history, the track record, the insights, the knowledge that you do. My assumption further is that those people can be educated and trained and perhaps come out of an arts management program at a college, and then, you know, theoretically have done research into the type of art generically you show, and you create, and know other people and can look at that and then look at what galleries around the United States and or the whole world that show artists who do work somewhat like yours, and that people like you can be created, and that they don't necessarily all have to have a wealth of wisdom beforehand. Go with me on this one.
Yeah.
What you know, so that if someone is going to seek out a person, what traits is it, you know, beyond your wonderfulness that others, you know, would want to seek out in someone, or traits or ability to do what?
I think it's I think it's knowledge-based. So in no particular order, you have to have knowledge. You have to have knowledge of the art world, and you have to have knowledge of individuals in whatever art community that you're working in. You have to be passionate. You have to be, like, on just a very pragmatic level, you've got to be like organized and thorough. You've got to be nimble. You've got to be able to, I think you have to be able to talk sincerely and in an educated way about your artists and, you know, whom you like. I think I'll go back to kind of what I said at the beginning. I think it helps. I suppose there's another way of doing things, but I think it helps to look at the artist's entire career. It's kind of like project managing, you know, an artist's career. So it's not just like, okay, let's send out this random press release and let's get you this random gallery, and maybe we like the gallery and maybe we don't, but we're grateful to have a gallery, and so let's just do it even though it's the wrong thing and the guy might be a shyster or whatever, you know. Like I think that whomever the artist chooses, I think it's to the artist's advantage to look carefully at his career. I'm going to go to the generic he here, his career and what he wants, and have somebody work with him who examines all the various facets of his career and then plans accordingly and keeps those things in mind as they move through the process, which is kind of an ever-changing process. It's a little bit of a moving target. So you've got, you got to have some agility too.
Do you kind of see yourself as a private art dealer that doesn't sell art?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And yeah, that's exactly right. I was talking to somebody today, and I've got like 5 people whose work I really, really love, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, I should open up a space or something. And no, that would be ridiculously stupid. But I mean, kind of a private art dealer, kind of not, because I'm not making money in that way. It's not like the financial structure is different. And as I said, I want to turn. If an artist wants a gallery, I want to facilitate that. And I want the artist to be really happy with that dealer and vice versa. And I want that dealer to be able to make great recommendations about that artist's career and help manage it. But once that happens, as I said, then I take myself out of the equation, because then I become redundant.
I'm jumping around here. I mean, is some of your compensation based on a percentage of action? I mean, I'm assuming you find an artist at a gallery, you get a fee of some sort. True?
Yeah.
And you get a percentage of action that the gallery or that the artist receives?
I have one situation like that, and I do not like it. I don't like it because there are too many variables in the primary relationship between artist and dealer, and that can be a personality thing, it can be a business thing, it can be a location thing, it can be a priorities thing on either side. There are various places for it to fall down if it's going to fall down. If it explodes and it's great, but it's not always like that. And I don't want my compensation to be subject to sort of like the vagaries of a relationship over which I have absolutely no control or influence. So I'd rather get a retainer and a fee for for securing a gallery at a museum or whatever, and then not take a percentage. I know others take percentages, but I don't like that.
How many other people do you know who are doing this?
Nobody. I mean, nobody doing it in the way that I'm doing it. And
how many people do you know who aren't named Klein who are doing this?
True. I think that's a prerequisite. And this, as you know, and I don't want to deviate from this focus. This isn't my sole business. I've got an arts management company, and there are 4 pillars to the business. This is one of them. So I'm not dependent upon this one thing for my entire income.
What do you do to remain current, to know the lay of the land, the new galleries, the old galleries? Do you think it's important? And I think the reason I mention this is because I think artists can emulate and do this on their own. But how important is it for you to go to art fairs? How important is it when you travel to go to galleries in those places? How important is it for you to travel to go to galleries? Important for me to travel to go to galleries. Important for me to know who pops up where. Look, the landscape of art fairs changes. It changes every second. So the participants on this may or may not know that part of my secret shame was running Art Chicago last year for 1 year only. And I saw it for what it was. But also, in that year, and this was before Tony Carmen announced his show and before this and that, like Dallas, there was a new show that started in Dallas. Okay, there was a new show that started in Houston. But not only was there like the primary show that started, there are the ancillary fairs, right? So, the pulses and the scopes and the red dots, like all of those. And then the ancillary fairs also proliferated in all these cities like, in the Hamptons and Palm Beach and wherever. And so it's kind of hard to keep, it's kind of like, and the people on this call will know that it's like social media. If anybody's involved with that, like tangentially, professionally, like you can't like make a stand and say, this is how I'm going to manipulate social media now, because things are changing just too fast. So you kind of like take the best advantage
of what you know at the time and make decisions accordingly. And the reality is that in a year, it's probably going to look different. So yeah, I mean, I think it's smart to be aware of the art fairs, like to go to Miami, or to go, you know, during the Basel weekend, or to go to New York like last week and this week when there are 7,000 fairs going on. It's really kind of hard to get your bearings, and even the smartest, most astute, aware people get confused there. So, I mean, it's fun. You can learn things. You might find a dealer who you think has a sort of sympathetic, aesthetic. So that's cool and valuable, but I don't think it's essential. I think doing all of those things to some extent is helpful.
I want to open this up to questions in a moment. So start raising your hands, folks, if you have a question. I think this has been, for me, you know, talking to Robbie and Stan as artists, business partners, the most enlightening and informative and revealing thing in the art world that I think there's a huge need for, and that I wasn't aware of that existed before. And I find it particularly like intelligent and valuable. I'm teaching this course with you guys, and I don't feel like this is a whole lot different than being a life coach for other people in other professions, except I couldn't address any of them, except this one. But you know, there's a certain kind of basics. And this is sort of kind of one of the reasons that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of art magazines, so I pay attention to them. I find it easier to look at other magazines and other publications and books and, you know, extrapolate from them, going, well, hey, if you can do that in that field, well, why can't we do that in this field? So, you know, I think a lot of the information that Robbie is sharing is of potential value to us. I'd like to know more. I don't know. I'd like to know more, but I don't know how to get the answer out of Robbie. About what to do in terms of finding younger or other people who are more interested in working on a smaller level or piecemeal with artists whose careers are not necessarily as far along as the artists with whom you're working. But that said, go ahead.
I think there should be somebody whose job it is to do that. Like if I weren't dependent on a good solid income, that would be really fun for me. I mean, I think that would be really, really great. And I think that I think that people should be doing that job. I think there's a lot of value in it. And you know, there are arts management programs that have many of them around the country. You know, a fabulous one, I think, at least part that I know about it at Columbia, you know, that are training people maybe to do this. But I think there's an absolute need to do for that service.
Can you generalize what levels various people are that you were working with? Like this woman in Europe who wants museum, is she at the top level of the artists with whom you're working?
Yeah.
You've learned to sing.
And that's all you get. No. Yes.
And
a couple people in Chicago who are pretty well known, but
how old is the youngest person? Ballpark.
I'm trying to. Oh, you know what? Maybe 50. They're all in their. The youngest person is. Oh no, early 40s. I have one guy in his early 40s, and the rest are in their 50s, and a couple 50-year-olds and over.
Okay. And how many of them, maybe you may not know the answer, how many of them have master's degrees? What percentage of them? Paul, you can guess at this too.
50.
How important is it for an artist to have a master's degree?
0%. From my perspective, you could find some, you know, you can have 12 people in here arguing with me, but from my perspective, 0% important.
Okay, let's take Jeff's question. Jeff, you are on.
Great. I just lost my video connection, but Robbie, I think you're a breath of fresh air here, and I wonder, how is it possible to get in touch with you?
There you go. Can I?
How do you do it? Like, do you have a thing, Paul, that you can?
I do. Should I put your email address in here?
Yeah. Did you say, is it or? could you put it in?
Should I goddess@gmail.com? Is that the one?
No,
Is it RobbieKlein@gmail.com?
Robbie S. Klein
Robbie S. Klein.
at Gmail. And I can give you my cell phone also.
Robbie S. Klein@gmail.com. You can see that pop up in the chat box. And your cell phone, 312.
No, 312-805.
805.
9383.
9383. Okay.
Great.
And Jeff, that's it for you?
That's it for me.
Jeff does really cool sculpture out in the boonies, and he makes these amazing things that interact with with gravity, and he does really, really well with them, and he could do really, really better. Is that fair, Jeff?
Yes, that's exactly it, out in the boonies.
Where are you?
I'm in Glen Hartsville, PA, on the Appalachian Trail.
Oh, you're in, oh, wow. Yeah, I know exactly where you are.
That's why I said it, Daniel Boone territory.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, let's go to Joyce.
Robbie.
Ron.
Hi, old friend.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in a
How
long
are you?
time. I had a question about, let's say an artist wanted to get into a museum. First of all, can you guarantee that? And also, in terms of how you charge, would it be per hour or per month or what?
Right. I can't guarantee anything. You know, I mean, I can't, I would be foolish to guarantee anything. And when Paul and I were first talking, he asked me about sort of like how I began the process. And I think like in the early stages, in the early conversations with the artist, we would determine whether that person were ready for that level of acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't take it beyond any commitment beyond that. In terms of charging, I'm charging now a minimum of $500 a month, and then I'm a little bit reluctant to talk about the like what's the remuneration for like the gallery show or the museum show, because and I'm happy to talk about it in person or privately, but you know, somebody who wants a New York gallery and only wants a New York gallery and is ready for a New York gallery and whatever, that's a different kind of thing than somebody who would be happy being in a suburban Illinois something, right? And so the amount of work is different, the amount of compensation is different. So there's a scale, but I will say, I will generalize and say, I'll put it between $3,000 and $7,000. And then there are variables in there, right? Because there's securing a one-person show, well, not a one-person show, but they're securing gallery representation toward a one-person show. And then there's getting somebody included in a group show, which has a whole different level of value, but it's, you know, it's a little bit different of a scale.
And how do you feel about internet group shows, international internet group shows, as opposed to national group shows?
You mean like
mortar and brick?
Isn't it the VIP art fair, Robbie?
The what?
The VIP.
You know, I will be honest and say that to me is untested. And it's not just to me it's untested. I've talked to a lot of dealers for whom the jury's still out. So that's part of this like weird moving landscape with the art fairs. Like these are popping up as well as, you know, all these other the real art fairs. And I think people don't know how to deal with them yet. I don't know if I don't think that they found their footing. When I was running Art Chicago and I was talking to dealers, one of the first questions I asked was, how has the internet affected your business? And I expected the answer to be huge. I expected the answer to be, it's been huge and profound. And I don't think it's been huge and profound. People still want to look at the piece People still want to touch the piece. So it's not like they're going to go and see your painting and then buy it. There's still the interaction with the real gallery that occurs. So the internet, I don't know how to, I just don't know how to answer that internet thing yet. I think maybe in 3 years we'll know, but I don't think even in 1 year we'll know. And what's the art fair? It's 5 letters and the last 2 letters are SY. With all that, yeah, with all the backing behind it. Yeah, I mean, so that's, I mean, there are all sorts of weird things that are popping up, and with the right money behind it, you get the right money, you get this one great gallery to participate, or 10 great galleries. It could change, but I just don't think we know yet.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joyce. Karen, wait a minute, I'm unmuting you. Proceed.
Thanks. Robbie, thank you so much. Okay, I have a 3-part question, and it kind of is related to what we were just talking about. What do you think of these online things like ArtSlant and ArtWorks, and there's so many popping up now, and then related to the artists that you work with, do you work with people who have a web presence? Do you see that as a conflict, or do you encourage people to have a web presence?
I think a web presence is absolutely essential. Essential, essential, essential. I don't think that anybody can do business without it now. And I think that you know, in the old days, in the really old days, you know, people get artists sent slides, right? And that's how people got their work. Now, we're all, as a society, used to looking at stuff differently, right? So I can call my friend Bill the dealer and say, I want you to look at Joe Blow's work, or I wouldn't call him, I'd send him an email. Say, could you look at this? Right? And I would send him a link, and then he can just like take an immediate look and give me a response. So I think it's really critical. I think the presentation on the website is really critical. I don't mean that you have to spend $10 trillion with a really genius web designer and have like the coolest thing ever. What I mean is, I think that it should be simple, and I think that you should present the work that you consider your best work first. And I think that there needs to be a uniformity of presentation, right? So if some pieces are going to show up, they should all just be the same format. Some can't be big and some can't be little if they're all part of the same scale. And there are plenty of people who do that, and it's avoidable. You know, so yes, I think that's money very, very, very well spent. And actually, I've got like a great web designer to recommend. Sort of maybe.
You might want to share that, because the web a number of people have recommended web designers, and then they get too popular, and you know, they don't work with us anymore because they've got enough people.
Yeah.
Who's
well,
this?
I'll tell you the name, and I will, like, full disclosure, I didn't use them because it doesn't matter why, but I would have used them, and I love them. They actually do the website for one of my designers, and then and a colleague of mine, and they're called We Can't Stop Thinking. And the guy's name is Nicholas, something multisyllabic with a bunch of consonants.
But so I'm sorry, just really quick, would you encourage the people that you represent and you're trying to find them galleries to get on as many websites like ArtSlant as they could possibly get on, or would you just have them focus on their website?
You know what? That's a really good question, because you can, or I think we can err on the side of like just throwing as much stuff out there as we can, so a lot of people will see it, but you kind of lose the coordination. I think you kind of lose the coordination of the effort, right? And if you're posting a bunch of sites and monitoring them, that might not be to your advantage from a time standpoint as much as like finding 1 or 2 places that you want to carefully control your messaging.
Now I want to take that a step further. I think with almost all kinds of art that doesn't buy, you know, like Caravaggio and like that, we are judged, or artists are judged by the company they keep. So that if you put your art up on Etsy, which is mostly a craft website, you know, I think it's going to do you damage. If you put it on the Saatchi website, I think it's probably going to be neutral. If you put it on ArtSlant, most people seem to only have their name there and not much examples of their work, and the way they have their work doesn't seem to be presented well. I mean, I think ArtSlant's a good place, but I don't think it's that good. Artsy is a new website that I think is fabulous, and I think the context looks really good, art.sy. And, you know, at this point you have to be invited to participate, and I've been invited, but, you know, I don't know how we all make it. I don't know how far you can get past the portal without an invitation, art.sy. You know, and even people who do next to free websites like Other People's Pixels, I think are, you know, it's a bit too generic, and almost everybody's website looks the same, which is why I like seeing a variety and array of different website designers recommended, because, you know, I mean, yes, we want to raise the level of the pond, but we don't all want to raise it the same way. So, you know, I think it makes sense to do that. If you take that even further in terms of being how you're judged by the company you keep, if you make really hot paintings, oh, bad pun, and you also make oven gloves, I don't think you want the potholders on the website with your really great paintings. I mean, I don't think it's wrong to make hot pads, but, you know, I think they belong somewhere else. So that I think you need to, you know, I think the art public and the art, which includes the dealers, etc., want to be able to quantify your work, which is part of the reason I showed that Gerhard Richter video a little bit ago, because I think he did it as an anomaly. But most people want to be able to try and pigeonhole you and say, this stuff is really interesting, as opposed to 2/5 of this stuff is really interesting. So I think you need to be conscious about, you know, I mean, I think Facebook is a really good tool. We were talking about Pinterest, I think is a really good tool. But you need to see the level that these places have, and that you are comfortable with your art being in that pond.
You know, Facebook, I think, is really, I think the Facebook discussion, I mean, there are a lot of obvious Facebook discussions, but a couple that just kind of like really fascinate me. I have two Facebook friends, one of whom is well, it doesn't matter who he is. He's an art historian. And on a daily basis, he'll post 20 images. And it's like, God, you know, guys jamming up my Facebook page, you know. But then they're all beautiful. Like, and I learn things from that. And he's got like he's got such a sophisticated eye. So it's a little bit of a love-hate, but at the end of the day, I decided to keep the feed going. And then there's an artist, I think, who friended me through him, who posts his own work. Unfortunately, it's all older work, but it's like absolutely spectacular. But it certainly caught my eye, and I think maybe it catches others' eyes as well. I mean, I wouldn't do the 20 images a day thing, because really, you know, you could alienate people, and if they don't like you, then you really alienate people. But, you know, kind of why not do that? And Pinterest is kind of, you know, it's untested, but I mean, I personally love that site, and it's fun, and sure, somebody may pay attention to you. But once again, like, if you have so much time in the day and you're making art and you want to guide your career and you're taking it really seriously, then I'd caution you against spending too much time, like, dissipating your efforts on some of these other sites like Pinterest, because it's fun, cute, maybe there's going to be something, but I don't think that there's an immediate enough gain.
Karen, all good? I'm going to assume that's a yes.
Yes, thank you. I muted myself. Thank you very much.
I know, I saw. I appreciate it. Alana, it's your turn. Go ahead, Alana.
Hi. This has been excellent. I think my question has been answered.
Well, that's a shame. You have a new one?
Yeah. We kind of covered my second question, which was, are there other people out there like Robbie? Of course, there's nobody like Robbie, but it might be doing similar things, and how do we find them?
That's a good question, I think. You know, and I think people who have worked for art galleries are possibly in that. You know, I mean, I think a lot of the people who sit at the front door of an art gallery, who I think deserve a lot of respect just because they're human beings and have to be a buffer, a lot of them have really good knowledge. So that that is one option. People who used to do that. Maybe someone like Ginny. Oh, I can't. Her name used to be Ginny Berg, and she got married. Robbie, do you know her last name?
I call her Ginny, the gallery news woman?
Yes.
No, I mean, I know her as Berg.
There is the Chicago Gallery News, and there's a woman named Ginny, G-I-N-N-Y, who runs it. And, you know, frequently those kinds of people become clearinghouses for that kind of information. You know, I think you got to give it some thought, and I could probably come up with more also, of people who likely would have access to people who used to work in galleries or used to work in museums, and now, you know, maybe they had a baby, maybe they didn't want to work all the corporate hours, but they want to, you know, they have this kind of knowledge and information. And, you know, this isn't something that one can't grow themselves into in a pretty quick period of time. You know, if you don't have all those substantial gallery relationships like Robbie's acquired, that doesn't mean you can't find out and do the research by, you know, delving thoroughly into the Art in America Gallery Guide and other sources. So it is doable, Alana.
Maybe I'll find some young person to hire for not very much money to focus on that part of the business. I'm actually serious.
You know, that's not a bad idea.
It's going to happen tomorrow, but, you know, but it's, I mean, I think it would be really interesting.
Let's go to Aiko, and then Joyce, if you have another question, maybe we'll come back to you if you did, but your hand's still up. So Aiko, it's your turn.
Hi, Robbie. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi.
Okay, great. Hi, and thank you. This information is really very useful because I've actually contemplated working with someone like yourself in the past. But well, most of my questions have been answered. But I'm wondering, you know, in terms of gallery relationships with your experience with your artists, sometimes you're in a market that you're just in that market, and the gallery isn't really doing a lot of sales, but it's a nice market to be in. How long do you usually recommend giving that an artist give a gallery to actually come up with a certain percentage of sales before they kind of pull their work and go elsewhere?
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. I guess there are different ways to answer that. First of all, if you have another option of another gallery,
yes,
you may want to explore that sooner than later. If you don't, and there's no harm in staying, then there's no harm in staying. Some of it depends on the deal that you made with the gallery. So if there's some exclusivity contract or something, that'll dictate like when you can leave and talk to somebody else. Is that your? I mean, you can tell me if this is too personal of a question, but is that your situation currently?
Well, my situation, well, it's a gallery on the East Coast that's been representing me for some time, and I've had gallery representation on the West Coast, and you know, but a couple of them gone under since the financial debacle. So I'm kind of like hunting here, but this particular gallery it's a very nice gallery, and it's nice to have something in the East Coast. They've been, I think it's a good place to kind of hang my hat. The sales have not been really great, but it's been kind of a nice thing to have on my resume, and so I'm giving it a chance. Most of my sales come from the West Coast galleries and from my open studios. I don't have a gallery in my specific geographical area, and so I still do sell out of my studio, but if I were to get a gallery in my directly in my area, I would give them whatever I give to all the other galleries. Sometimes I do refer, like if I get a phone call off of an ad or something like that, I'll feed it to my gallery that's been doing a lot for me because I feel like it's like a win-win situation. You know, you're kind of supporting each other. But I'm really speaking more towards galleries that aren't bringing in a lot of sales, but they give you a presence in an area.
I guess I'd say, as you said, it's great. It's a great line on your resume. If you don't have a conflict for any reason, like you don't want to be in another gallery in the same geographical region, or another dealer with whom you're, you know, negotiating who wants to remove that, then you might as well keep it on there. And who knows? You know, you have your work there. You're not putting any energy into it. Sounds like you're not putting into it either. But but you might as well keep it there until you've got some other sort of like prevailing reason to leave it.
Yeah, I was feeling like, you know, since I shifted to the East Coast, so you have that sunk cost, and it's a really nice venue, and quite frankly, we've been in a financial debacle the last couple of years, so I can't really blame it on the galleries that they've really been supportive of my work, but the sales numbers are very low. So, all right.
Have you had this conversation with them? Like, have you talking to them maybe about a one-person show, or do you know if they have group shows coming up in which they could include you or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm always in the show. They've got my stuff really well displayed at all times for the last year and a half, and so it's like a win-win situation for me. But it's like they usually don't do a lot of sculptures. For a while there, I was the only sculptor, and so that was I like that kind of a dynamic. And so I guess what you're saying is, yeah, as long as it's working for me, it's okay to leave it there until the market really picks up and I'm able to find another gallery in the other area, around that area, if this one doesn't pick up in the sales.
That's what I would do. And you know, do you know if they go to any art fairs and exhibit in art fairs? Because if they
I haven't seen them doing that kind of stuff. I don't think so. I think they're just kind of like a little a quaint, nice gallery, you know, in the Massachusetts area, and I don't think they really do a lot of aggressive marketing.
Yeah, I would be tempted to just leave it where it is for now until you have some reason to leave it.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. You know, a number of you have hands up, but I can't tell if you have them up from before or new. I know Monica wants to say something, and then I don't know if Joyce does or not, and I don't know if Alana wants to say more or not. And Greg had his hand up and took it down, but I'm calling on Monica now, and Patricia, I think, wants to also. We're going to Monica. Yes, Monica.
Hi, Robbie. It's nice to meet you. And also, and maybe I don't have as much of a question, except that I did mark down your telephone number.
Good.
If you don't mind, I will give you a call.
Great.
I wanted to share something. I had originally, some time ago, applied to be part of the Berlin Biennale. And apparently what they did, they had an onslaught of applicants worldwide, of course, and like 5, 6, some odd thousand people. They decided to start what they call art wiki, and the people that didn't get into the Biennale will be shown. Their work will be shown on the art wiki. This time, it's only the ones that were invited, that had applied to be in the Biennale. They will eventually open it up to the larger public, and I'd be very curious to see what comes out of it and who in Germany is involved in it. So that's actually all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Oh, well, thanks for informing me. I didn't know that, and I'll look for that. That it'll probably have some really great art.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. All right, Patricia, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks, Robbie, for talking with us tonight. I've really enjoyed listening to you so far. And my question is along the lines of doing research on galleries. You know, if you were to advise us as a group, like what would be your recommendations or best practices for finding a good gallery on our own?
Good question.
And I guess my thought too is along the lines of, you know, like, is there like a better business kind of way of checking on a gallery? And I don't mean better business, but like if they're really a good art advocate.
It would be absolutely spectacular if there were, and it would end a lot of problems and bad business and charlatanism and all that other stuff, but to my knowledge, there's not. You know, if you travel, that's a great time to look at stuff. And I would start by checking out, you know, gallery guide or ads in major magazines, and then going to those galleries and just because you've already responded to their work, and then seeing and sort of just seeing what they have. You can also if you have particular galleries like in Chicago that you like, because let's just keep it at home for now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's going to go to 6 different cities. You could go into Zola Lieberman and see a painter and really like the painter's work, and then talk to and then ask William or whomever, you know, like, tell me about this guy's work. Where is he from? And he'll say, you know, he also shows in Seattle at, you know, at Craig Kucera. And then that'll give you a link. So it's like you're someplace, you're home in Chicago, you go to galleries anyway, Patricia. And then like just kind of start there, and you can just trigger your research really easily with the people that you know and like and the relationships that you have. It doesn't need to be a big, complicated, horrible process. Mm-hmm. And just ask some questions, and then like, oh yeah, so he shows at Craig Kucera, and then go home and look Craig Kucera up and see, you know, if he has other work that you like, and let one thing kind of spark another one. And I don't know, I mean, it may be the case that if there are 10 galleries in Chicago that you like, you might like 2 artists at each of those, I'm making this up obviously, at each of those galleries, and then you can ask the question about those artists, or not even ask the question, but you can go home and Google the artist and then see where else they're represented. And I think you might find some like commonality there. And then that might give you insight into where you want your own work to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Cool. Thank you. Joyce, your turn again.
I had 2 questions. I have affiliations with 2 Chicago photography galleries, and I'm always in a quandary as to how to use social media, because I don't want to compete with these galleries. I have other work that I could show, but then it is not necessarily work that would be representative of my branding, let's say. So this is a question for Robbie and Paul, and I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Joyce, I'm not sure where you think, can you say a little bit more about where you think the conflict of interest might lie?
Well, I mean, if I have a show coming up in May at one of the galleries, it's a 5-person show. If I show some work related to that show, then as somebody had said, then there's no point in me showing your work because you've already showed it on the social media, on Facebook or whatever. So, you know, I'm like, I don't want to work.
Oh, shush. I mean, you don't have to have this like grand unveiling as if it's, you know, I mean, and it's on Facebook, or if it's or something of that sort. It's not like you're doing a guerrilla ad campaign that will compete with that. And has the gallery actually explicitly asked you not to post those images?
No, but I spoke to a gallery in New York, and that's a very good gallery in Brooklyn, and the gallery owner specifically mentioned that.
You know, I would just be transparent and talk to the dealers with whom you're working and say, you know, I'd like to and you know what, it's like doing any other kind of publicity for your work. If, you know, if your work were in New City and they were going to talk about your, you know, or Paul, we're going to put it in the art letter, that would appear before the show opened, right? And it seems like, unless the world has really changed, that you're entitled to promote your work. It doesn't just benefit you, it benefits the gallery as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have any concerns about it, I would just ask them. Mm-hmm. And if they say, we don't want you to, I say, really? Because I think you could benefit too.
Yeah.
I think if a gallery feels that way, then you should tell them to go stuff themselves. I think that, I mean, that's a little harsh, but I think, Joyce, I'm much more interested in seeing your work physically and in person, and because I'm intrigued by what I see going on the images that you've shared with us on the internet. And I'm assuming that an image of yours that is printed several feet high looks different than that same image presented several inches high, and that I will only appreciate it more in the flesh than I will having seen a reproduction of it. And I think it's really good marketing and advertising and just, you know, using social media on your behalf to do that and encourage people to go to the gallery where the gallery might make money, and you're doing this for them gratis. I think they're stuck at a couple of centuries ago if they don't see that that's of benefit to them.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have another question, or is that it?
No, that's it.
Cool. I'm assuming at this moment, let me scan this real quickly. I think we're done with the questions. So, Robbie, I hope that was informative or and fun for you, and I think it was informative for all of us. I think we all benefited a bunch and have something else to add to our bowl of things that we need to think about. I appreciate you participating. You did this really nicely. I'm unmuting everybody so that they can all say what they think.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you.
Robbie.
Valuable.
Robbie.
All right, everybody. Thank you, and good night, and I'll see you next Monday.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Better.
See you recovery. Okay, bye-bye.